Hey guys, Haxortech here for another video, and today we're going to be talking about the best mobile browser for your Android device. And some of these will work for iOS, but today I'm going to be focusing on Android devices. And so you can see here that I have a list of different browsers pulled up here at the top. All but the last row here are browsers that we're going to review. And just for a disclaimer, I'm not going to be going over any specs. I'm not going to be doing any speed tests or anything like that. The point of this video is to give an opinion on what I feel is my favorite browser and what I think is maybe the best browser for others out there based off what it offers. Now, everyone's experience is going to be different. What your needs are is going to vary as well. So obviously what I choose might not be the browser that you prefer, but we'll go ahead and get into this and I'll talk about some of my thoughts on some of these browsers. So the first one here is Google Chrome, and everyone knows Google Chrome. It's probably the most popular browser, especially on Android, since it is the default browser that comes on your devices. There are some benefits to it, so it obviously allows you to sync your information with your Google account, which most people have a Google account, so it's something that you probably don't even have to create a new account to be able to sync your data. It does work fairly smoothly. I haven't had a ton of problems with performance, although I have had it crash a couple of times. But this is not my favorite browser, and the one thing that I've had some complaints about with Chrome is just how basic it is. It doesn't offer anything really that is going to blow anyone away. So, for example, night mode is a really common feature a lot of mobile browsers are starting to implement, and Chrome, of course, does not have that feature yet. There is a workaround where you can get that feature, but that's just one of the features that would be nice to have that has not been included in Chrome yet. And there's a number of other different features out there that we'll look at in some of the other browsers here that Chrome just doesn't offer. So for me, it's not the browser that I use. It's a good basic browser. Again, since it comes on your device by default, it's something that probably a lot of people will choose just because that's the option that defaults there. But the biggest issue that I have with this browser is just how basic it is, the sort of the lack of features. So Chrome, there's not really too much that I want to talk about there. Most people have used it, so we'll kind of just compare some of these other options out there. Now, for Firefox, I'm going to actually review two different versions of Firefox here. I'm going to review the beta, which is more or less the same as the standard Firefox version here, but I'm also going to look at the Firefox, a newer version of Firefox that's available as well, and kind of compare the differences there. So we'll just go to google.com here. Firefox is a decent browser. I do like the layout of the tabs, actually. That's one of the things that I thought was kind of unique from some of the other browsers that I did like. You'll find in Chrome and a lot of browsers you have the card style view, whereas with the Firefox browser you have these little boxes, which not everyone might like, but I actually think that it's a decent design. It does also have some add-ons that you can implement as well. So there is a whole store of Firefox add-ins or add-ons that you can put into the browser, which is really nice. So that's definitely a positive. You can sign in with your Firefox account, and you can sync your passwords and your information the same way that you would be able to do with Chrome. So that's also a positive. But again, similar with Chrome, there's not really anything too special about the browser. As far as advanced settings in here, there's not a lot of very complicated options, and I don't believe that there is a night mode in this option as well, which of course for me, the night mode option is that's a basic feature that I usually like to see in my browsers, and it's something that will usually turn me off of a browser if it's not available. So I haven't been able to find an available night theme or dark mode on the basic Firefox version. So this is the beta, but the same is true for the basic Firefox implementation as well. So that's not the browser that I use either. But if we navigate over here to the Firefox Preview, we can see some other options here. A completely different layout from what Firefox is doing in that beta version here. And I have to say I was actually most impressed from any browser at the possibilities. With this particular browser, there's some things that I really liked here, and so getting into some of the features that some of those other browsers lack that I really like here is you'll find that in Firefox beta and in Chrome and a lot of browsers, the top of your page is where you have your address bar, and that's where you have all of your functions, and that's pretty much the only area that you can interact with settings and things like that with your browser. Now with the Firefox Preview here, you can see that the way I have it set up, if I go back to the bottom here, you can see that I have my address bar at the bottom of the browser. So if I want to just tap on that bottom section here, I can go in and I can do a search, or I can type in my URL, but it's more convenient for me at least to have it at the bottom. I do believe that that's configurable. If you wanted to move it around, you could, and a lot of the browsers that have that at the bottom, you can just move it to the top if you want. I'll have to double check and see if you can do it. Yep, here we go. So if you do top, then you can set it to be at the top there. So when I go to a web page, you can see now it's going to move that bar to the top if that's where you prefer it to be. But the fact that I can have it at the bottom is definitely very useful. But what I found to be the best feature of this particular browser, and again, this is a preview, so this is what's to come, but because it's not the final version, and because this is just a preview, it hasn't been the browser that I'm using for my daily activities just yet, but it has a lot of potential. And so what I like here is that I can save my tabs to a collection. So that means that if I want to go in here and open up some different websites, so I've got 10 here, and you can see all of my different websites that I have opened. If I go down here and I click on Save to Collection, I can either select all of the tabs, or I can just select a few of those tabs. So if I wanted to select these two tabs here, I can click on Save, and now I can just go ahead and create a collection of all the tabs that I want to save here, which is really great because if I want to go back and I want to look at these specific websites that I had opened, it's easier than having to go and individually bookmark each of those websites. It's a really useful feature, and this is actually similar to the functionality that I have in Chrome using an extension, but the fact that it's available in this mobile browser is, for me, a really cool feature. So the fact that you can save your tabs as collections, and just the overall view here, this kind of condensed layout of all of your open tabs, I think is really nice. You can just swipe to the right to get rid of all these tabs here, or you can click on that X next to them, and whenever you open up a new tab here, you can see that it's just going to make a new entry there, and you can click on that Save Collection ribbon there to save those tabs to a collection. At any point you can name them. You can have as many as you want in there. Say you were looking at a bunch of videos, you could have that as a collection, or if you had a bunch of news articles. Again, it's just a very useful feature. Now, the thing that ultimately for me was keeping me, at least most recently, from using this browser as my main browser, and in complete honesty, is the lack of password management, which I haven't been able to get a clear answer from Mozilla yet as far as whether or not that's going to be actually implemented in future versions or not. So you can see here that I have my account associated with this particular browser, but the only thing that is syncing is my bookmarks, my history. Now, as I mentioned before, the standard Firefox mobile browser does have the ability to sync your passwords and information, so I anticipate that once this preview is implemented in a final version, that more than likely you'll have that ability to save your passwords and things like that. So this is the browser that I'm most interested in. The only other caveat that I found so far with the Firefox browser is that Firefox, it's the only browser that uses a different technology for how it displays, or at least that I found. It uses a different technology in terms of how it displays content. And so you can see here as I am kind of viewing this list of search results, the way that this populates in Firefox might be different than what it's going to populate in Chrome or another browser, and that's because it uses a different engine, kind of similar to how Firefox uses its own engine on the desktop application as well, whereas applications like Brave and Chrome, they both are based off of Chromium. And so Chrome or Brave, whichever browser you're using, it's using a similar engine, and so therefore, what you see and what's going to load a certain way, it's going to be fairly similar depending on which browser you're using. There won't be a lot of difference. It's really just more of the features and the functions that will make the difference there. So this is a really great browser. I also like this little search icon that kind of appears as you're scrolling up and down pages, which is really nice. So that's kind of a useful feature there. And those were really the big things that for me stood out with this browser. Again, I think at this point we'll just have to wait and see what happens once that final version is released. All right, so moving on here, the next one that I'll open up here is Puffin. And Puffin is a decent browser. It really serves for me a very specific purpose. The thing that's really nice about the Puffin browser is that by default, it's using a cloud-based system. So whenever you connect to a website, for example, if I wanted to type in what is my IP, and I want to see what my IP address is here. This is actually not my IP address, and you can see here that the ISP is coming up as CloudMosa, which is the proxy server that Puffin uses. So when I'm browsing in Puffin, by default, it's giving me this proxy here. It's keeping my data safe. I don't have to actually activate a VPN or anything like that. That's a really useful feature. It's not something that would promote me to use this above all other browsers, but it is a very useful feature. And then the other thing that really is what kind of, in my opinion, the purpose that Puffin serves best is the fact that it's able to load Flash content and other content that other browsers might not load as well. So it does have a very specific purpose, and just in terms of being able to access certain sites that don't work very well on mobile devices, that's really nice. Some other things that I thought was really useful with this browser is the ability to have a mouse here. So let me just go ahead and turn this on to show you what I'm talking about. So you can actually use a mouse configuration here. And so if I wanted to just use this touchpad and point my mouse over a specific part of the browser, super, super useful if you're going to a website that maybe doesn't have a mobile friendly version and you want to be able to select text that's really small or really difficult to get to. You can do that with this browser, which is a really, really great feature. In addition to the trackpad, you have some other things that are pretty cool here too, like the gamepad. So if you had a Flash game, for example, that you wanted to be able to interact with, you can use this built-in gamepad here, which is really nice, to be able to interact with that game. And then you have the ability to also just bring up your keyboard at any point in time. So these are all power features, for me at least, that are really useful for certain websites that, again, don't really interact well with mobile devices so much. So that's all the positives that I have for Puffin. The caveats for me with Puffin is just the overall layout is not something that really appeals to me for a daily mobile browser, something that I'm using for just all the mobile sites I want to go to. If I'm looking at news articles, I'm looking at tech information and things like that. It's the fact that it's allowing me to view certain websites in a more friendly way doesn't really help me, because most of the websites that I go to are mobile friendly anyway. So that's not helping me in the data savings portion. Not really useful to me. There is also, the claim online, and I have seen tests that were completed for Puffin where this browser performed faster than other browsers, and that makes sense because, again, it's using this proxy server, so you're not having to locally load the information. You're actually able to have that information rendered in the cloud, and because it's rendered in the cloud, it saves both time in terms of rendering and loading that data, but it also is saving you on the physical amount of data being used by the browser, which is great. But the thing that I, again, don't really care for as much in this browser is the bookmarks setup here. It's just okay. Let me even just get to the bookmarks here. So if I go to my bookmarks section, you can see here I've got my list of bookmarks. Just the layout is a little bit confusing for me. It's just really a UI thing. I think I don't like the layout as much, and it does not have, I do not believe, a dedicated night mode. Let me just double check here. When I was looking through, I didn't see a night mode or anything that I could use. Yeah, so I don't see a night mode. Oh, actually, I take that back. There is a dark mode available. But here is a good thing that I wanted to talk about. So you'll see here and you'll notice that this does have a dark theme, but it's not truly a night or dark mode. And what you'll find in a lot of these different browsers is that here what you can see is that the toolbar is now dark. But my web page here is still a white background, and so in a dark environment, especially if you have someone that's maybe sleeping in the room, you don't want a lot of light emitting from your phone, this really does not help to serve that purpose. And that was what I remembered. It's been a little while since I've really played with this browser, a whole lot, but the fact that it only affects the toolbar, that's not really a dedicated night mode, it's a theme, but when I want to use a night mode, I want the entire content here to be darker so that I don't have so much light emitting from the browser. So that was one caveat here. And again, it's just, in my opinion, really more built to serve that niche purpose of being able to load certain content that you can't in other browsers. It's meant to be a little bit faster, which is nice. But in my day-to-day usage, if I want something that's just, the most comfortable browser for me to use, that was not the one that I picked. The next one we'll look at here is the Kiwi Browser, and I have to say the Kiwi Browser is by far the most powerful browser, I think, available on mobile devices, or at least on Android devices. It's one of the most powerful browsers out there because of all the power user features that are built into here. Now you can see that it's very heavily kind of inspired by Chrome. It's using that same sort of engine, but there's just a ton of features here that you won't find in Chrome. And if someone was looking at Chrome as their main browser, if you wanted power features, I mean, this is ultimately just Chrome, but with extra things. There's literally nothing that you'll find in Chrome that you wouldn't find in the Kiwi browser. So it's a very interesting option, and it's one browser that I did for a period of time use as my default browser. You can see it does have a dedicated night mode, and as I mentioned, you can see here that when I turn that night mode on, it actually does affect all the content in my search results. It affects the content on the pages that I load, not just the content of the toolbars. So that's a really powerful feature, which I really like. Some other things in here, you can actually use Chrome extensions in this browser, which is an incredible feature, at least in my opinion. Because that's something that you can't really do with other browsers. You can usually only use mobile specific kinds of stuff in there, so that's really nice. You've got a comprehensive list of well, you've really just got two, but you do have some themes that you can pick from here, some privacy settings, a lot of similar things to other browsers, and then you can also, I believe, connect this so that you have all your passwords and everything managed. So here you can see that I have all my passwords stored. This does sync across all of the instances of Kiwi that you have installed. And I don't believe that there's an account or anything that you set up, so you don't have to create an account with Kiwi. That could be both a pro and a con, depending on what your preferences would be. I actually do typically like something where I can create an account so that if I'm on, a desktop version or if I'm on a mobile version, no matter what, I always have my information stored. But the interesting thing here with Kiwi is that Kiwi is really specifically for mobile devices, and to my knowledge, there's not a desktop-specific version of Kiwi available. Whereas with browsers like Brave and other browsers out there that have an Android variant, you might want to have it sync between your desktop and mobile version because there is a dedicated desktop app. So that's the one kind of caveat here. But power user feature-wise, it's definitely very comprehensive. You can move the top bar down if you want to. That's available in the settings function. So if I wanted to move my bar down, if I can find that here, I'll just see very quickly if I can do that. But while I'm trying, okay, here we go, bottom toolbar. So if I restart my browser, you can see that's going to move the browser to the bottom here. And another really cool thing that you'll see as I have this toolbar at the bottom is this little hand feature. when you can see when I tap that hand feature, what it's done is it's actually pulled all of the content down, similar to some of the Android device built-in kind of functionality, which is a reachability feature, so that if you have something at the very top of a page and you have a smartphone with a very large display, I can click that hand and I can pull it down. So if I want to now reach that YouTube icon, which I couldn't before, without having to use two hands, it makes it easier for one-hand usage. Something I could not find as a feature on any of these other browsers, so that was super comprehensive, really great. I really like that function. All right, some other features in here as well. We'll just look at some of the accessibility features. Now, the night mode is actually, unfortunately, the biggest thing that threw me off from using this browser as my main browser. So I have both pros and cons for it. Now, you can see that you have a lot of ability to customize it, which I think is the pro portion of this. I have it on grayscale night mode. If I turn that off, you can see that when I come back here, if I refresh my page, and I might have to just adjust this a little bit, but once you turn the grayscale part off, it's going to actually make the text in the background black with white text instead of gray. So I might just have to restart my browser there, but you can really fine tune the contrast. And so if I just move this around here and I play around with the settings, if I can just get this to, there we go. When I go back and I load it now you can see that everything is fully black. And so if I go to a page here, this is now what it looks like. And so you can customize it to be just black and white. You can have it be grayscale and, with different variations of colors of the text and things like that. So you can really just fine tune what you want your actual night mode to look like. And so again, for me, this was both a pro and a con. The only con for me was that when I was playing around with getting the night mode to work, when I compared the night mode that was set up as the default for other browsers, there were just other night modes that worked better for me. It made the text, a blue color or a color that was not as visible. So I really like this browser. It's definitely in my top list. I would say in my top 3 browsers to use right now, and I do find myself occasionally going back to it just for the power user features. But the night mode was definitely one thing that kept me going to other browsers, but it's really, again, just a very small margin, because the fact that you can customize it so much is very tempting, and it's certainly very powerful. So if we go back here to my list, the next one that we're going to look at is Brave, which I'm not going to spend a ton of time on. This is a tremendously popular browser right now, and to be honest, I really do not see the amount of draw to this browser. I think it's done a fantastic job of marketing the privacy portion of what you get with Brave, and there are some nice things here. You can see that where it is very similar to Google Chrome, some things that it has that Chrome does not have is this bottom bar here, and they do have a very nice, I will say, bookmarking function. Probably my favorite thing about this is just how easy it is to create a bookmark, whereas other browsers you have to kind of just go in there and choose which folder you want to save it in. With this, you can just click on the little ribbon and it immediately adds a page to the bookmarks. That's the one single feature that I do like a lot, and also that little search icon that makes it really easy to jump in and do a search. So simple things like that were really nice, but what I found to be some complaints here was that, number one, again, no night mode, which I thought, similar to Chrome, is definitely something that turns me off of the browser in 2020. So many other browsers have the night mode function, and for someone like me who needs to use it frequently for just kind of being fair to others in the room when it's dark, that's definitely something that I would have liked to see, and it's just not available here, so that was kind of a deal breaker for me with this browser. And it is kind of bare bones. You can see here that when I click on the little lion icon, I have the ability to choose my shields and what content it's blocking, whether it's ads or it's trackers and things like that. But, this is something that's available in other browsers too. This is not unique to the Brave browser, and that's what I kind of felt like with this particular browser. They've done such a good job of advertising it as that privacy alternative to Chrome, whereas almost every other browser that you'll find out there has some kind of privacy feature outside of Chrome. Chrome really doesn't explore privacy too much. Um, and there's a few others out there that don't really have those functions, but most of the ones that I'm reviewing here do have some kind of privacy feature that's either equal to, similar, or maybe even better than what Brave offers. So even though that's really one of the draws of the browser for me, it's definitely not something that makes me want to use the browser because it's available in so many other browsers. And it's not special, it's just the UI is maybe kind of unique here. Next to that, you have the icon for your BAT, which is really just it's a new thing that they're starting to do where they allow you to use or view Brave specific ads, and whenever you view an ad, instead of it being a burden on you, you're getting paid for it. And so you can either, I believe, collect the amount of currency that you receive for viewing those ads, or you can just send that to kind of as a donation to the different websites that you're viewing. So you can kind of contribute to those, maybe those news companies that you view very frequently, or if there's a particular content creator whose website you're going to frequently and you want to contribute there. It's a nice feature. It's not something, again, that makes me want to use the browser, and I found that it can be a little bit annoying. It does pop up with those particular ads occasionally when I'm trying to do something, and so I ended up just turning the feature off half the time, and the amount that it gives you is very low, so it wasn't really something that made me want to use the browser that much. I'm going back here, so we've got several other ones here, and some of these I'm going to really just jump through very quickly because while I've used them a little bit, there wasn't anything really crazy for me to explore in them. So Vivaldi was actually an interesting one because Vivaldi, and I just made a video on this, is my very favorite desktop browser. And that's still true. It's my absolute favorite desktop browser out there. It has a crazy amount of power features, which I just could not find in any other desktop experience. Now, in fairness to Vivaldi, it's a brand new mobile browser, and I think this one also has a lot of potential, especially being that Vivaldi is my favorite desktop browser. If they correct some of my concerns here in the Vivaldi experience on the mobile devices, on your mobile devices, then that would definitely kind of convince me to switch over, I think. But right now, some of the things that I have as complaints is really just the theme, which if I can come in here, I'm going to go and find the theme settings so that I can actually show you what I'm talking about here. Let's see if I can find this. Here we go, themes, and I can turn on my light theme, all right? So let me see if this is actually going to show me what I want here. I think they've actually maybe even updated it, but you know what, I take that back. That's because I have the dark theme on here right now, so what I wanted to show you is when I have the dark theme off, which I believe is what is doing this. Very interesting. So they may have changed this, what I was kind of reporting as a complaint before. And actually, you know what? Let me just turn off the dark theme natively on my device here and see if that's maybe doing something. I believe they may have changed the actual layout here because before what they had is they had actually a like a purplish kind of color, or no, you know what? It was an orange color in the toolbar at the top there. And that was my biggest complaint, is the color scheme that was defaulting for the mobile browser. I did not like that, and that's definitely, again, a big complaint I have is I want a specific color theme. And what I'm trying to figure out right now is why it's actually showing that dark mode in the background, because I do have my theme set to light, and I have the dark mode set off on the Samsung OS as well, so I've turned off night mode just locally on the device, and it's still showing everything in dark mode, which is a little bit interesting. I'm not sure if there's another feature or something that's doing that. But it has changed, it looks like, so that may have been a software update just the other day when I was using it. It was showing an orange theme on the toolbar, and that was the big thing, was just the color scheme was throwing me off a little bit. But other than that, the other thing that I had some problems with, which is kind of a weird one, and I don't know if it's even still doing it. It looks like they've actually fixed this as well, which is very interesting. And I'll have to go back and re-review this browser because this literally just appears to have happened. You can see this news feed here was that I'm actually able to scroll through here was not working as of within the past couple of days. And before I prepared this video, that was one of the reasons, combined with the color scheme of the toolbar and everything, that was convincing me to really not use this browser. So I'll have to go back and re-review this, but I'll just go ahead and give you my opinions on this particular browser. I do like several things here. I think that ultimately the best part of this browser is the fact that, again, it pairs with that desktop application, and so you do get some of the power features that are available there, and just, again, being able to link through to it. You have the speed dial function similar to the desktop experience by just clicking on that group of tiles from the toolbar view there, and so I can create different speed dial, which are really just kind of quick bookmarks to websites that I prefer, which is very nice. I'll jump back in here. I like the layout of the tabs here. And this is kind of similar to the Firefox layout here. You can see that there are these little boxes. I like that view. I think it's definitely useful, but everyone has sort of their own preference there. You also have the ability to sync from cloud tabs as well. If you have something open up in your desktop app that you wanted to sync here, you can do that, just similar to some of the other options that are out there as well. I can quickly access all of my bookmarks by clicking this bottom left-hand icon, as well as my history and my notes. And the notes is, again, a very unique thing with Vivaldi, which is a part or a major part of the desktop experience. So if you had notes that you already have built into your desktop application that you wanted to view on your mobile device, it's nice that you can access that very easily here as well. So that's a useful thing. Some other things here, as you've seen, there's definitely night mode options here, and so if I go to the theme settings, then let me just go ahead and turn the dark mode back on. Now it's in full dark mode, and the dark mode here actually is pretty good. I guess I could say it's relatively similar to how I just had it in the Kiwi browser. And I was playing around with it before. I had some problems kind of getting it to look the way I wanted to. It really took me a while to fine-tune it so that it looked the way that I wanted it to. But the night mode is definitely nice here on Vivaldi. I didn't have any problems with that. It was really only the light mode that I had problems with. But that is a feature that you get, like in some of these other browsers. Some things that are unique with Vivaldi is the capture page function. And so some of these things, like this capture page function, is definitely something that you won't find in any other mobile browser. So this allows you to capture the entire page here. You can see I can give it access. It gives me an image of that entire page. So this is the entire thing. I can scroll up and down, which is really nice if you have a long article or something that you wanted to capture. You could do that by using that function. You can clone your tabs. A lot of these are just really kind of similar functions and features to other browsers. So you can swipe to close tabs. Turn that on and off. Choose whether or not you want to show your scroll bars, which is nice for those that don't want to see that as you're scrolling across pages. So not really anything else specific to Vivaldi here. Again, I'm going to go back and kind of look into this one. Before this review, I would have said it was probably in my top 4 browsers that I use. It would be kind of right there behind Kiwi. But at this point, it's still definitely consideration. And I find that I go back and forth between a lot of different browsers. So the ones that right now are definitely the ones I'm most interested in is the Firefox Preview. I definitely go back to that one several times just to kind of play with it, and I like what it offers there. I like Vivaldi. and Kiwi, but I'll tell you what my favorite browser is going to be, or what I use really more as my daily driver here just shortly, and give you some thoughts. So Vivaldi, definitely a lot of promise, and again, they're updating this thing frequently, so some of those complaints that I had have already been addressed, it looks like, and I'm sure that there's going to be more and more features and more that'll come out as time goes by that'll make it a more appealing option. The next one we'll look at here is Opera. Right now, Opera has been in my top two browsers, and I'll get to the one that I use the most here just shortly. There's some really cool features here. I do like just the smoothness of the view with being able to go here and look at my different tabs that I have open. And the funny thing is I usually do not like this view. I usually don't like this card view, but just the way that it interfaces with this particular browser I really did like. So that's definitely something that's been useful. I really like the night mode here. And again, as I mentioned, that's definitely something that's a really powerful motivator for me, is just right now this looks kind of similar to some of the other night modes, but it does, if you were in a very dark environment, just the overall theme here, it tends to block out the light a little better than some of the other ones that have really hard whites in there that kind of show through. Depending on the environment that you're in. So I really like the night mode here. It's really nice. The search function here, similar to some of the other browsers that we looked at, I can just quickly click that search button on that toolbar that's at the bottom of the browser here, so I can go and do a quick search for Google or for wherever I want to go to. So that's really nice. And then I have the option to turn on my ad blocking. But one of the things that I did want to share here that is a really, really nice feature for those of you that want to protect your privacy as much as possible is in this private mode here. If I open up a new tab, you can see that by default, and my screen's not loading here for a second, so just let me give it a moment to... Okay, so I'm not sure why it's not allowing me to show it. I believe it might actually be blocking the view, which is kind of interesting. So whenever I go into the Opera, the browser here, if I'm in my private mode, it doesn't seem to want to show it. I think that's actually because the browser is completely preventing me from being able to show the private mode. But here, if I have it in this view, then it looks like it'll allow me to show it. So I'll just show you it here. So basically what's happening is it's giving me the option to choose a VPN. And if I click on that little checkbox there, then I can go ahead and enable VPN in the browser. I don't have to have a separate VPN client or anything like that to be able to connect to a VPN. It's free. There's no limits on it or anything like that. It's been fast for me. So the fact that you have a VPN that's built into the browser that you can turn on with your private mode is really, really useful. And a lot of other browsers, like really ultimately all the other browsers that I've been looking at, with the exception being Puffin that uses a proxy server, if you wanted to use a VPN or really just mask your IP and your information, you would need to use a separate application and download that onto your device, connect to that in order to use a VPN, whereas with Opera, you have that built in, which for me is a very, very powerful feature and something that's really useful. But outside of that, the thing that really makes me come back to this browser right now so much is how smooth it runs. If I just compare it to other browsers, again, I don't look at specs. I really don't care about specs. I don't care about, how fast something loads in a specific scenario. I really look at just overall usage over a period of time. If I'm using a browser for a week and it's overall very smooth, it doesn't crash and things like that, that's going to make me want to use the browser, and Opera has been very reliable. The performance is very smooth, and just the user interface is really nice. And it does use a different engine, I believe, than some of the Chromium-based browsers, which blows up text a little bit, as you can kind of see here. And it does default to reader mode on some of these articles, which for me, those kinds of things actually are useful. It just adds to the experience, and it makes things seem like they load a little bit quicker. It makes it seem like a smoother, overall better experience. So this is actually my top two browsers right now, just because of how smooth everything is and how well it works. And just because of the way the night mode, it just works really great. It really does exactly what I needed to do. So this is up there in my top browsers, and the only one that I've been using more. Granted, I may be switching over to Opera as kind of my main browser with the combination of the VPN function and just how smooth it operates, is Samsung Internet. And that's the one that I've actually been using as my main browser for quite some time. Again, this isn't something that I'm committed to staying to or anything, but just for kind of disclosure, that's the one that I usually use the most. And the reason is previously been the smoothness of it, and that's really an important thing for me. How smooth websites are when they load, no crashes, the consistency of the ability to connect to websites and have my passwords and everything stored, not have any problems with password management, things like that. And Samsung Internet has been a really, really great browser for me. There is one caveat that I will share though, and I'm going to kind of share the one thing that has made me switch from this being my main daily driver kind of browser to some other browsers recently. So the one thing that does frustrate me is the fact that I'm limited to only 50 tabs. By far the biggest frustration with this browser, and if it wasn't for that, I probably wouldn't have even been considering looking at other browsers, or at least when I started using this one, it was really serving my needs very well. I also really love the layout of the tabs here, which is actually probably my favorite thing about this browser, is the fact that I can use this layout, or I can change to my list view here, and for me that's super powerful because I'm constantly using a lot of tabs. I have a lot of tabs open, a lot of websites open, and I don't want to be going through and having to scroll for hours trying to, find something. Now, in here, I only have the ability to have 50 tabs saved, which, or open at once, I should say. And some people may say that's too many. Certainly that's something that everyone has a preference on. But I just happen to have a lot of things open, and I want to go back and I want to look at things from a previous day or whatever. And so I do have a lot of tabs oftentimes open. And so the ability to change how I see these, kind of the format of the view here between the card view and that list view, for me is a really, really nice feature. Has a good reader mode as well, which I like. And another thing that's really powerful about this is the ability to separate and distinguish between saved pages and your bookmarks. So you can see here when I want to go and click on add, again, I just clicked on that icon there and clicked add page to, I can add it to my saved pages or my bookmarks. Now if I go to my saved pages, what I like about here is this is not actually the same thing as the bookmarks. This is just a place to save pages so you don't have different folders or anything. It's literally just a list of pages that you've saved. And so when I go through and I find something that I want to save, but I don't want to put it in a specific folder, I just want to quickly add it so that I can go back and find it later. It gives me a really nice view to be able to go through here and just look at things that I bookmarked it in a sense, but it's not an official bookmark or something that I want to use frequently. So what I use that for is really like my news articles and things of that nature, whereas my bookmarks I use for things that I navigate to more frequently. And so it's almost like you have two separate mechanisms to add bookmarks, which is really powerful. And then if you click on this star icon here, that's your bookmarks. That's where you actually find all of your different official bookmarks that you've saved, and you can add a bookmark by clicking on the star icon in the top left-hand corner, which is, obviously really easy in terms of functionality to use. I like the layout of the settings kind of gear here. You can choose your text size. The printing function is really nice too. It makes it really easy to access the print function. And I've had print issues on other browsers. I have not in this particular browser. It always works consistently with my particular browser. From this quick settings menu, you can easily enable night mode or disable it, where you can see here that I have that option to choose the light mode. You have ad blockers and you have add-ons. And there's an Amazon Assistant add-on. I don't use that too much. There's a couple other add-ons, and one of them is a Video Assistant add-on, which is very useful. That Video Assistant add-on is one that was recently re-added into the browser. Let me just navigate back to my internet here. So the Video Assistant was something that a lot of people had requested back, and as far as I know, I believe it's still here in this app. And the Video Assistant just allows you to more easily manage videos when they're playing, kind of pop it out and do different things with streaming videos. That was really nice. And they're still adding different add-ons onto the browser, but they have the built-in Samsung store there to look at different kinds of add-ons that serve different purposes. And there's other kinds of ad blockers that you can add on here and whatnot. So a lot of really powerful features here in this browser. Again, if it wasn't for the limitation of 50 tabs, then I'd probably use this as my main browser and not look at other browsers. But because that is a limitation, I have found myself switching between Opera, and I'll probably be going back and playing around with Vivaldi a little bit more as well, especially because some of the concerns that were really making me jump away from that browser are being addressed. I'm seeing that's being addressed. And again, that's just to point out a beta as well right now. So once that's an official app, once it's out of beta mode, I expect that it's going to be a real tough contender for some of these other mobile apps. Now, the final ones I'm going to go through here are Dolphin Cake and UC Mini. I'm going to be very quick with these because I don't use them that often, and they're probably my least favorite browsers actually. You can see this one I had uninstalled some time back after I used it for a while just because I didn't care for it that much. The only complaints I have with Dolphin here is just I think the layout here is a little bit dated. I'm not really sure what it is. It's just the overall kind of UI to me does not appeal to me. It does have a lot of power features. It does have add-ons which are nice. Or at least I believe there's some add-ons in here that you can use. It has a very unique kind of view of your tabs here. You can see it's almost a transparent view. You can close everything and you have everything just kind of in a stacked kind of format here. So there's definitely a lot of unique things about this browser that differ from other options out there. But just the layout, the view for me is not something that I've really liked that much. And so that's really what's pulled me away from using Dolphin. And this browser I know was very popular for a while. I believe there's still a lot of people that use it. So it is a very competitive alternative to things like, Chrome and things of that nature. Here you can see kind of what the night mode looks like. And it's completely different from some of those other options out there. And it really does get rid of all that bright white text. So it does a pretty good job of keeping things ideal for a dark setting, which is nice. But just the interface to me, I didn't like that much. And I just found more useful features in some of the other browsers. So here you can kind of see you can sign into Dolphin Connect, which allows you to connect to your desktop browser and to other things. Here you have your home button to come back here. The Dolphin icon allows me to look at all of my power features here. I can click on tab push. Actually, let me just open up a new tab here. Open up a new one. Not actually sure what the tab push feature there does. You can look at your downloads, exit, and clear your data from here. So there's not really too much to see here. Oh, and you can also, another thing that's kind of neat is that you can enable your tab mode here. So you can actually see your tabs almost like the old style of Chrome, but in a way that works with your mobile device here. So I can just add all these tabs here like this, and I can navigate left and right to move those around, and I can turn that on or off. I can put this into full screen mode, or I can go out of full screen mode. I can immediately enable my incognito mode, and I can choose no image. So there are some power features in here, but again, the biggest thing was definitely the interface for me. Just the layout, I wasn't a huge fan of, and I will say that they've undergone a lot of changes from what the browser used to look like. So it's definitely changed from the last time that I kind of used it very significantly, but for me, I still just kind of find myself going back to Samsung Internet and the Opera browser. So that's Dolphin. Then we also have the UC Mini browser here, or sorry, this is the Cake browser, and we're going to go into the UC browser next. But here we have the Cake browser, and so I'm going to go ahead and just get started with this. I really didn't care. Let me actually go back here real quick. I didn't care for this browser just because they've tried to do too much, I think, with what the browser is meant to do. They advertise a lot of different features in here in terms of things that you can do and making it easy to search for content and news articles and things like that. And they kind of make some assumptions about what you actually use your browser for. I just don't care for it that much. So here I can just give you a quick demo of what it looks like when I want to go to a website here. So again, one thing that I'm not a huge fan of is the sort of UI here. You've got this very aggressive bar at the top there. You do have the ability to upgrade to Cake Premium, which has different things like VPN features built in and stuff like that. So another thing I didn't really like about this browser so much is that it's constantly asking to do things. It's wanting to now do VPN connection. It does prompt you to upgrade, or it's constantly kind of notifying you that you can upgrade to the paid version. I have an ad here that's coming up in a way that I wouldn't find on other browsers. I just didn't care for this browser that much. The search mechanism as well is just not something that is useful for me. That's really the big thing here. As you can see, that it's really too busy. You have a lot of content here that you wouldn't have in another browser. I just want to be able to search for whatever websites that I'm looking to go to, and a lot of this content is not even really tailored or centered around what I do. So they put all these different things here to make it supposedly easy to find things like news articles and things like that. And it just, for me, this browser is just a little bit too busy, and it doesn't have power features that are really useful for me. I'm not sure if it has actually a dark mode. Let me just double check here. It does have a dark theme, if you want to see what that looks like here. But again, if I go back here to the settings, even here, it's still asking me to upgrade to premium, and that's something that really does turn me off. I don't like apps that are constantly prompting me to pay for something. In the apps that I'm using as my daily drivers, things like Samsung Internet, Opera, and even potentially Vivaldi, but also some of the other ones that I reviewed today. Really, none of the ones that I've looked at today so far prompt you to pay anything at all. And so this browser is kind of, prompting you to pay, which is not something that I'm a fan of. And then finally we have UC Mini. And this browser, it's probably one of the browsers that fewer people have heard of. It's pretty simple. Not a lot of complicated things to it. It is meant to be sort of a focus on speed. And when I've actually tested this out just in day-to-day testing, I haven't found that it's particularly faster than other browsers. So that's not something that would motivate me to use this if it was speed alone, just because of what I've seen so far. Has not really made me feel that I'm getting any advantage as far as the speed goes out of this particular browser. It does have a nice night mode in here, which is good. It doesn't have a whole lot of unique features or anything that have been useful for me. So you can see there is a full screen option here. There's a speed mode which you can enable, and you can go in here and you can fine-tune speed mode for different websites, which I've played around with a few times in the past. You have your incognito mode. You can switch out of dark mode. Your tools here also include a QR scanner, feedback option, and you can save pages. So nothing too crazy. I have my home button here, so I can come back to my home with my frequently viewed websites. And the way that you look at tabs here is pretty interesting. I do actually like this particular format. So as I mentioned before, being able to see it kind of in this bar view is actually really nice. That's something that's pretty useful. I don't like it cluttered where it's really big, although the boxes view that's in Firefox and in Vivaldi I don't mind too much, because for me it's easy to kind of go through there and look at things, but some of the tabbed kind of options out there are just more difficult to go through and find previously opened tabs that you have. And so the more kind of condensed, I guess, that it is, the better for me. But I think the biggest thing for me is there wasn't anything that was a real standout that made me kind of come back to this browser. Again, this one also, they've really done different changes on a lot of these browsers from when I was using them more. So some of these things, I'm kind of noticing some improvements at least, which is good to see. But, again, if I'm looking at a comparison to other browsers, I find myself going back to Samsung Internet. I find myself going back to the Opera browser. And I don't know if you can actually change. Let me just double check the settings here. You can see it's pretty basic in terms of what options you have in settings. Now there is some add-ons here, but the add-ons are pretty much just limited to your ad block, your browser settings here. You can choose to go from tab view. You can choose either a list view or card view when you're looking at those tabs. So if I was to change this to card view, now I can go back here and I can look at my tabs. And so now this is kind of more similar to what you have in Opera, so you can do that. You can customize that. You can also sign in with an account, which is going to sync your information. You can adjust your scrolling options, add in zoom buttons, adjust animations. So there are some kind of neat controls in here that you can go around and tweak and play around with. You even have notification settings here that you can go in and adjust, and even specifically for Facebook, which is kind of nice. So they've improved this browser a little bit, which is definitely good to see, but I think the biggest thing here again is just the UI. It's okay, but I prefer the UI of other browsers out there. I prefer the overall feel to Samsung Internet and Opera browser. I mean, it's really kind of hard to explain, I guess. It's really the smoothness of it and the way it interacts. And again, what I'm using my browser for is to look up a lot of tech articles, going in and checking stats on certain page for certain things. Sometimes I'll even go in and launch YouTube on my browser. I print things off and things like that. And for those functions, what I found that I go back to most is Samsung Internet. But again, kind of back and forth between that browser and Opera. The one I'll probably play around with most right now is Vivaldi, just because I'm really curious to see what's going to happen there. And what would make me definitely switch to that one as my main browser is the fact that I do use that as my desktop browser. So if they continue to improve that, that would probably be the one that I would lean towards. So again, the point of this video was to kind of give you an idea of what I thought was the best browser of 2020. There is not a solid answer. The browser that I use most, and what I would probably say is my browser of 2020 overall, has been Samsung Internet. That's the one that I keep coming back to the most, if I'm completely honest. And if I had to give you my opinion, I would say Samsung Internet is the one that I like most because short of the tab limitation, there wasn't anything specifically that bothered me about the browser enough to make me want to switch to another browser. And the tab limitation actually, funny enough, was a positive thing in some senses in the long run, and the reason being because for someone like me who just uses so many tabs, it basically forces me to not open up too many tabs, and if you open up too many tabs, then it can also cause the speed of the browser to kind of decrease. So that kind of encourages me when I'm trying to go in and open up a new tab. I'll have to close out an old tab that I know I'm not using and launch a new tab that way. Just the user interface, the fact that it has the saved pages function, which is not available in any of these other browsers, to be able to easily store my content, the dedicated password management through Samsung Internet, and then there's also the fact that I have a Note 9 here, a separate application on my device locally that stores that information. So if I go in here, I can go to Samsung Pass. And in Samsung Pass, I have all of my information that has actually been stored in my Samsung Internet browser. So that's kind of useful as well, so that it's not just limited to the actual internet browser itself. There's a dedicated app that I can go in here. I can just swipe my fingerprint, and it's going to show me all my passwords, almost like a separate password manager, so that's kind of useful. So it's really just the layout, the way the dark theme looks, and things like that all keep me going back to Samsung Internet. So if I had to pick one, that's the one that I personally use the most. But there's a lot of really competitive and compelling options here. Again, Opera is really nice. Vivaldi is really powerful as well and is definitely improving. Kiwi is the best browser out there for power users. If power functions like extensions from Chrome or something is something that you really want, and that's a feature that you really want to have, that's definitely the way to go. And those are the ones that I really have the most positive opinions about. Again, some of the other ones in there, things like Chrome, just falls a little bit short. The regular Firefox browser, not something that really stands out too much to me. Puffin is just a very niche app. The Cake browser is a little bit too busy, and then the UI for Dolphin and UC Mini, even though they do have some useful functions and features, I just am not a huge fan of the UI of those two browsers, the way it looks and the overall kind of experience with those browsers. They don't pull me back in to use them. The only other final one, again, is Firefox Preview, and that's the browser that I'm probably most interested in seeing what they're going to do if they bring that password management function back and they continue to improve that browser. That could also be the one that I go back to and eventually be my favorite browser. But for now, I'm sticking with Samsung Internet. That's going to be the browser I'm going to use the most. It's also the browser that I have all of my data and my passwords kind of saved into, which is a little bit of a bias, but again, UI-wise and everything combined, that's the one I go back to most, and the one that works most often smooth for me without any kind of lag or negative impact on my experience. So that's my comprehensive review here of the different browsers that are available here on mobile devices. And I wanted to go through all the big ones that you might find on the Play Store to give a good review, kind of idea of what I think of all of these. And again, this is not meant to be technical to actually see the speed or anything of these browsers or to see certain functions being performed. It's really just an opinion here. So I'd love to know what you guys think as far as what your favorite browser is out there. Do you guys have a favorite internet browser, mobile browser that you guys go back to very often? Let me know what you guys think. Comment below, like the video if you liked it. And I will see you in the next video. Now, before I do go, there is a couple things that I did just want to promote here. Now, I do not have a sponsor for this channel, but whenever I do find useful apps, features or functions or services out there, I do like to promote them. And there are two things that I wanted to mention today. Now, the first one is only going to be for my US viewers here because it's only available for US viewers, but it's an app called EarnIn. And you can see here I can go ahead and log in with my fingerprint here. What this app does is allows you to get a immediate cash advance, basically, without having to pay anything at all. And that's super nice because what I can do here, you can see I've got a view of my bank balance. Now, that is not correct right now. You can see it said 11 hours ago, and so it's not actually updated. I got to relink it. But you can see here what I can do is once everything is set up properly and you have it connected to your bank, you'll have this cash out option. And so if you would like to cash out up to $100, for example, early before you get paid, all you have to do is click on the cash out option. And if you need an advance of, say, $100, you can get that. And then once you get your paycheck, even if that's a week away, then they're going to automatically deduct that from there. So if you're in a tight spot and you need some money, all you have to do is go into the app, and there is a limit to how much you can do for each pay cycle. It could be up to $100 per pay cycle. It could be a little bit more. It could be a little bit less, depending on a number of features. But the thing I like so much about this app is that, number one, you get those cash advances completely free. They do ask that you give a tip, just as a courtesy to them, since they are offering that function and that feature. But you don't have to tip. You can tip them $1 or you can tip them nothing if you don't have the money or if you just don't feel like giving that tip. But they give you that cash advance and it comes straight out of your paycheck, so there's really ultimately no fee to you unless you choose to give them a tip. But the other thing that's really nice is it gives you that, if you have it linked properly, then you'll see your bank balance in there, which is really nice. And so that's actually something that can be to your benefit, because not only does it give you the bank balance, but you can also have it set for alerts. You can have it alert you when your balance gets below a certain amount. You have the lightning speed function here as well. So you can link a debit card and get money instantly from the lightning speed function. You have your balance shields. The balance shield is where you can tell the app to notify you when your balance is below a certain amount. So that's definitely very useful. You have the health aid here. This allows you to submit photos of medical bills belonging to you or a family member, and you can negotiate medical bills. So there's a lot of kind of cool things there, and they even have a cashback reward section here where you can see I'm able to actually go in here and find different local places that offer some kind of a discount, and using this app I get discounts with them as well. So just something that I wanted to share with you guys. If you guys use the link in the description, it does help to support the channel. I do get a small commission, but again, this is not a sponsor for the channel, just something that I wanted to share with you guys. Now this is only for US viewers. For those of you who are not in the US, the other thing that I did want to share with you guys is an app that you guys have probably heard of before. It's called NordVPN. And so this is something where I did share with you before. Again, it is completely free to use the VPN in the Opera web browser, but if you're not using the Opera web browser and you want a dedicated VPN, NordVPN is one of the best options out there in terms of VPN services. They do have some really competitive rates and plans, so if you guys are looking for a VPN, this is definitely one that I would consider checking out. And I'm going to have a link in the description to that as well, so you guys can just follow that landing page that I've linked, and you can certainly go in there if you're interested in getting a VPN that will help to support the channel as well. Thanks again for watching this video, guys. Let me know what you guys think, and I will see you guys in the next video.